Two more receivers coming off the board. The Colts get their guy, Adonai Mitchell, who I think a lot of people thought might have been in the early part of round two. He falls to the middle, to the end of round two at pick 52 to the Indianapolis Colts. And then in round three, the Jets, they passed on an offensive skill player in round one. They had the opportunity to take Brock Bowers or another receiver. When they traded down one spot with the Minnesota Vikings, they go offensive line, but they get their guy in round three, Malachi Corley. So let's talk about these two receivers now. I'm Jamie Eisberg. That's Dave Richard. That's Heath Cummings. Heath, I'll ask you these two guys. Do you have a favorite? Because Mitchell could easily be a starter on the outside, at least for the Colts, opposite Michael Pittman. We know they have Josh Downs. He's going to be the Alec Pierce replacement because Pierce has kind of struggled in the early part of his NFL career. And then for the Jets, they're going to have an opportunity maybe to get Malachi Corley on the field right away, depending on Mike Williams' recovery from his ACL tear. But he's looking like the third receiver behind Garrett Wilson as well. So in a crowded receiving core, more or less, for both these guys, which of the two do you prefer?
I will, for redraft purposes, slightly lean towards Adonai Mitchell. I do think that Corley, I was hoping he'd get into round two, and the first pick of round three is close enough. But he does bring some of that new kick return appeal. And so I'm a little bit leery that maybe the Jets made this selection planning to put him in that spot, and there's not going to be a whole lot of targets. I think, who was it, Xavier Gibson last year that they used on kind of some trick plays? Maybe he has that type of role, but I'm a little worried about Corley's target share. And you have to be with Mitchell as well, but he will at least play a more traditional wide receiver role. I think he'll be better than Alec Pierce, and could challenge to be the second guy behind Michael Pittman, especially in the red zone.
We talked about. I'm sorry.
Sorry, Jim. Go ahead.
Well, we talked about these two teams going into the draft as potential landing spots for receiving help, whether it was going to be a tight end or wide receiver. And there's some pretty prominent guys, at least at the top of the depth chart, that could be impacted by these moves, or maybe not. Just based on the capital that was spent. So Michael Pittman, we know, got a contract extension this offseason. Garrett Wilson, finally gets his quarterback with Aaron Rodgers coming back. We're excited about him entering his third year. Are you concerned about the two leading receivers on their respective teams with these additions? Again, Mitchell going to the Colts in round two and Malachi Corley going to the Jets in round three.
I actually love this for Garrett Wilson because Corley is a different type of receiver than Wilson. It's still going to offer the opportunity for Garrett Wilson to be the top target getter in New York and to get good volume. So I'm really glad that they didn't draft Bowers or made a move for Odunze or something like that. Malachi Corley is a different type of receiver. And I think Heath summed him up pretty well. He's a thicker version of Gibson, which is how they, probably intend to use Corley this year. He's thick. He's got good speed, a little more physical than you'd expect. He's been compared to Deebo Samuel, but like a light version. So
somewhere in between Laviska Shenault and Deebo Samuel.
Just
that little range.
Yeah, I know. I don't like half that range though, but he's probably going to be like right around there. I don't know if he's ever going to be more than a bye week replacement in fantasy. So I'm not super excited about him, but I like just where he is. Mitchell will have a chance to take away some targets from Pittman, but I don't know if I'm ready to say that he'll be a big factor in Indianapolis. Could he be number two on the team in targets? Sure. Could that team throw the ball 30 to 32 times a game? Yeah. I mean, that might be where they live. I don't know how many games there's going to be where Anthony Richardson's throwing it all over the place.
If these guys hurt somebody, I think they're more likely to hurt guys like Josh Downs and Mike Williams.
That was my next question. So, are we looking at the second tier guys and almost saying there was some sleeper appeal with Josh Downs because we saw some flashes early in the season last year. He kind of tailed off as the year went on, but I think, as a fantasy community, that was one of the players we were sort of looking at and saying, okay, could be a good sophomore type of option with a healthy Anthony Richardson. And then Mike Williams was always going to be kind of a guy you settle for, but healthy, number two target. So does this, I don't want to say crush those guys in particular, but it certainly takes away from what the upside could be.
I think it makes most, and what's the phrase, ambiguous. It puts them in dogfights for the roles that we thought they had secured. I didn't think there was going to be much doubt that Josh Downs is going to be the number two wide receiver for the Colts with their current roster. And now I'm not so sure. I thought Mike Williams, when he was healthy, would be pretty easily the number two target behind Garrett Wilson. Now I'm not quite so sure.
Well, I think what you said about Williams is probably more apropos for both these guys, because I think Downs' role is going to be the same. He'll be the slot guy.
Right.
The targets, like you said, that Williams will fight for targets. I think that's fair. Dave, I'll ask you about the quarterbacks here. So Richardson gets a weapon. Rodgers gets a weapon. Do things change for them for their fantasy outlook for 2024?
No, I don't think so. If there is a change, it would be for Richardson for the better, because Mitchell does have that upside. but I don't know if it's not enough to say, yeah, we're moving Anthony Richardson up a spot or two. He's still a top 12 fantasy quarterback.
I'm not moving them, but I think this could help Rodgers quite a bit. Like this could be some easy stuff for him that Malachi Corley after the house or after the catch on a 5-yard throw turns it into a touchdown. So I think he could help this offense and help Rodgers. But I agree with Dave. I'm not changing my ranking because of it.
It's been a good draft for Rodgers. Gets an
Yep.
offensive lineman, whether it's depth or just somebody that could be a starter. Gets a receiver because they needed some help there as well. So it is a step in the right direction for him. Richardson, I think whatever Mitchell brings, upgrade over Alec Pierce. We know what Richardson's upside is. It's because of his running ability, and this just adds to his his passing hopeful prowess. Just getting another playmaker on the field, but I don't think again it's going to change a lot of people's opinion on them. Heath, let's go the dynasty route with these guys. So rookie only draft. When are we looking at Mitchell? When are we looking at Corley?
They will both be round 2 guys. Probably middle of round 2 in a 1 quarterback and late round 2 in a super flex. Like there was some talk, and Mitchell went in round 1 of some rookie drafts before the draft. It's a pretty decent fall for him. Corley's kind of always been at that 2-3 turn. They'll be right in that range.
Dave, how do these guys compare to some of the other receivers who went in round 2? So McConkey, Keon Coleman, some of these guys, they're behind him, I would assume, right?
Mitchell will probably be you might see Mitchell real close to Coleman, but I'd be surprised if he were ahead of Coleman. Maybe if someone was a fan of his before the draft and they're going to overlook the situation that he's in, and they're going to overlook Keon Coleman's situation, and they'll take Mitchell just based on talent. I could see that. I don't think I would do that, but I would probably, if I had to rank the top 3, it's going to be McConkey, Coleman, Mitchell. I don't know if I'm forgetting anybody that was taken on day 2, but
Polk to watch to
yeah, I'd put Mitchell ahead of Polk.
Yep.
I might put Polk ahead of Corley.
I actually have Mitchell and Corley right now ahead of Leggett, but I was just pretty down on him and didn't love that landing spot. So that's a day 1 guy that I would actually take these guys over right now.
Yep, and again, that's a team looking at it and saying, okay, they probably favored the prospect more so than we did. So take that for what it's worth. But yes, right. I think that's where we start nitpicking in terms of, I think Leggett versus some of the guys that went in round 2. And obviously the 2 guys that we're talking about here, and Adonai Mitchell going to the Colts and Malachi Corley going to the Jets. That'll do it for us here. And again, a lot more NFL draft coverage from a fantasy perspective on Fantasy Football Today.